Rules are rules.
These words became almost a spell for supporters of Djokovic Deportation. He didn't follow the rules, so get out of the country, the mainstream mood in Australian media. It's all good and right, except the fact that he did. Hello everyone, Illya Marchenko here, your favorite tennis YouTuber, and today I'll talk about Novak Djokovic Deportation Saga. Let's start from the beginning. A while ago, it became clear that to play Australian Open, you need to be vaccinated. Novak Djokovic's stance on vaccination is known since infamous Adria Tour. So we have an issue here. On one hand, he needs to follow up with his words and beliefs. On the other hand, he wants to win 21st Grand Slam. Novak himself didn't know what to do with this situation, so he decided to wait and see.
We'll see. We'll have to wait and see.
Meanwhile, Tennis Australia let players know that if you've been sick with COVID-19 recently, that makes you eligible for a medical exemption from the vaccination to enter Down Under. Conveniently, Novak got a positive PCR test for COVID-19 on December 16th. Thus, he started to prepare his documents for an exemption. Although the authenticity of this coincidence raised a lot of questions among his haters, but rules are rules, right? And following the rule, innocent until proven guilty, we must accept this as a fact. And we must accept his strange behavior after the positive test as a fact as well. He didn't announce it publicly, which is extremely rare. Everyone is almost proud of their positive tests these days, and rush to get the hype, tons of likes and sympathy announcing it, or at least to let everyone they were in contact with know about the risk, which is actually a very good thing to do. But he didn't do it for whatever reason, and we can only guess why. My guess would be that because of his previous statements, he would get tons of hate like, "Ha ha ha, you deserve it. If you got a jab, this would never happen to you. Ha ha ha." Yeah, that sort of thing. And he wanted to avoid that for the time being. Nevertheless, on December 17th, Novak attended a tennis event in Belgrade to present awards to children. Later, he explained that he was unaware of his result at that time, which is quite logical explanation, to be honest. I've done many tests over the last 2 years, much more than I would have liked to, and to get your result back after 24 or even 48 hours is not something very unusual. And it's not because of an actual test, but because of bureaucracy around it. So unless you pay for an extra fast PCR test, you get the result back in approximately 24 hours. Yes. But I have zero explanations on the next one. On December 18th, he goes to give an interview and a photo shoot for the L'Equipe. Later he stated, "I felt obligated. I didn't want to let the journalist down." Sorry, Novak supporters, I can't help you with this one. I mean, that's very stupid. The only thing that perhaps coronavirus hit his head, so he couldn't think logically anymore? Or parents taught him sharing is caring? I don't know. I mean, these explanations are so stupid and illogical that they actually might be true. Anyway, let's move forward, as there will be more stupidity pretty soon. Djokovic gets his visa, gets his exemption and boards the plane, but unfortunately on his arrival denied an entry to Australia. And there was so much bullshit about this one. My eyes were bleeding. Myth number 1. He got his exemption from Tennis Australia. No, Tennis Australia doesn't have the power to do that. Djokovic's application was reviewed by 2 independent panels of medical experts. One of those was the Independent Medical Exemption Review Panel, appointed by the Victorian Department of Health. In fact, from what I heard, around 20 people were applying for an exemption and only 5 got one. So his exemption was definitely given by one of the Australian authorities. Myth number 2, that he was denied the visa after the officers saw his documents. Have you ever traveled? How many times have you been able to board a plane without a valid visa? Australian authorities must have seen all his documents already. In fact, when you fill in travel form, you have to attach your certificate of vaccination, or like in this case, the documents for a medical exemption. You know how many times my certificate was checked at Melbourne Airport? 0. They have checked all the documents beforehand. And according to my information, Novak traveled like a regular mortals with a commercial airline. So what has happened? Here is my pick. This guy, Scott Morrison, the Prime Minister of Australia, didn't like this post from Novak Djokovic. And I understand why. Especially this part. I'm heading down under with an exemption permission. Yes, exactly like this, without any mention of medical reasons. These provocative words were not warmly welcomed by the Australian public, who has suffered from one of the strongest restrictions over the past 2 years. And with Australian elections just around the corner, the Prime Minister decided to step in and to use all his power against the #1 tennis player in the world.
Rules are rules.
But Novak wasn't ready to give up so quickly, and after a few days in the infamous detention hotel with rats and cockroaches, Novak was ready to fight for his rights in the Australian court. Australian authorities tried so hard to cover their butts and to show everyone that Djokovic has the same treatment like everyone else, so started to look for people who entered Australia with exact same exemption, but were smart enough not to post about it on their Instagram, or simply were not famous enough. So Australian authorities found Czech tennis player Renata Voracova, cancelled her visa and sent her out of the Australia. She was in the country for around 10 days already. So what kind of threat she posed to the most COVID-free country in the world remains unknown. Renata decided not to fight for her rights in the court, following the advice of her lawyers, because of the 3 years trial ban risk and simply the very high salary of those lawyers. I know at least one more PST member of another player who was treated the same way. Same thing, guys applied for an exemption, got it, and nobody would ever find out if not because of Djokovic. If anyone still thinks that it's not political, you're fucking blind. But let's come back to Novak, as he has won his appeal in the Australian court. Judge decided that Novak wasn't treated the way he should and his visa was restored. Is that it? Justice has prevailed? Rules are rules, right? Nah. Turns out Alex Hawke, the Immigration Minister of Australia, has a right to cancel anyone's visa if he decided that someone might be a risk to the health, safety or good order of the Australian community, and that cancellation is in the public interest. So the person doesn't necessarily have to be. It's enough if the minister thinks so. So it's a pretty low threshold. All the other details are irrelevant at this point. As we've learned from the last year, Australian politicians like to show off their power.
People are free to provide lists of demands, but the answer is no.
So Alex Hawke used this right and cancelled Djokovic's visa once again. This time chances to get a favorable decision in the court were really slim. So Novak Djokovic saga ends with him being deported from Australia. Rules are rules, right? Unvaccinated #1 tennis player was too dangerous for the Australian community with 100,000 new COVID cases per day. I'm not going to debate about vaccination here, I'm not an expert, not even close. But I respect that Novak went till the end with his beliefs, even though he tried to find a loophole. Unlike an American guy, Tennis Sun Green, who demonstratively withdrew from Australian Open because of vaccination requirements. I supported Novak with my tweet, and like usual in today's reality, when everybody divides the world into the black and white, I had tons of hate from one side. People assumed that if I support him in this case, means that I support everything he's done, does or will do in the future, from hitting a line empire to sharing COVID with the kids. And I had tons of love from his fans, who took my tweet as a voice of freedom and a fighter with a tyranny. But I'm neither of those. I'm just riding the hype.